Hey everybody, David Chatham with Angel Oak Creative. We're here for another episode of our nonprofit State of Minds podcast. Excited to have Autumn Keck joining us today. Autumn is a rock star grant writer and CEO and founder of Scribe, a grant writing consultancy, a fundraising firm that really focuses on grant writing. Autumn, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's Autumn and I met kind of fortuitously just a few months ago, and I felt like I was looking for a unicorn, Autumn, because I couldn't find a darn grant writer.
We're out here.
I know, and there you were. So grateful for that. Tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Scribe. You all are doing some great work.
Sure. Well, I'm Autumn Keck, as you mentioned, and I'm the founder and principal consultant at Scribe LLC, and we're a full service fundraising consultancy focused on grants. So we do all things grants. We do grant audits and assessments. We do research for our clients, obviously strategy and development and writing the grant, calendar management. So anything that you can think of in terms of grant applications and the whole grant process. It's myself. I have 6 grant writers who work with me, and they're all over the country. We all work remotely. And then I have a local research assistant who, when the clients come in and they initially ask for research, she is the first person to kind of work with the clients and start them on their process. We work with anywhere between last year, I think we worked with 35 clients total.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're growing. Last year, we raised about $3.7 million, and this year we've already raised over $7 million.
Look at you go. Good
So
job.
our impact is growing as well.
Wow, that's great. How did you get into this world? I mean, based on what I'm coming to realize is that, grant writers aren't a dime a dozen. So, it's how did you end up kind of picking this, or how did it pick you to become a grant writing expert?
I think that you just termed that perfectly. It kind of picked me. I've always been in fundraising. I'm a career fundraiser. I started out coming out of college thinking I was looking for a job in public relations. And I kept on getting to like the final round of all these interviews. And one person was like, well, I can't hire you. I think we need somebody with a little bit more experience, but my friend is hiring for a fundraising job. And I think that you would be perfect for it. So It just kind of really fell in my lap. They hired me, and I started off as a director of development right out of college. So I kind of had to really like jump in and learn everything that I can.
It did pick you, didn't it?
It did. It picked me. I never, at that point, I never even thought about fundraising or applied for a fundraising job.
Wow.
My thought of fundraising was what you saw, like, you remember those commercials from like the 80s and the 90s of like, it would be like, help feed this family or help feed somebody from a different continent, that type of thing. Yeah. So I just never knew that it was, these type of jobs out here. So I did that for about 11 years. I worked in health and human services and higher education, which I loved. And then I got married, and I started expanding my family and really wanted some flexibility and autonomy with my schedule. So I went out on my own. And at first I just thought of myself as a contractor, like I'll contract for a while and I'll go back into a full-time position. But the business continued to grow, and I was able to have that great work-life balance with my family. I had 4 kids. So obviously I needed a lot of flexibility within my schedule to the point now where, again, I have 6 people working with me, 7 people working with me, and we're, increasing our impact each year.
That's great. So why is grant writing so hard, right? I mean, you make it look easy, I'm sure, but when we work with clients at Angel Oak, we talk to folks, I get asked, it seems like at least once a week, do you know somebody who can write grants? It is a specialty. I'm guessing it's a little bit art, a little bit science, and a little bit luck, right? I mean, tell us about what are the challenges of the grant writing process, or the grant writing, methodology, because it does seem to be a challenge for a lot of nonprofits of kind of how to crack that code, because it takes time, right? It takes focus, it takes clarity. And, so anyway, tell us a little bit about that. Why do people struggle with that grant writing issue?
I think the misconception is because it's called grant writing, people think it's all about the writing, when in actuality, it's really no different than any other type of fundraising where it's all about the relationships. So building a relationships with the prospective funders, building relationships within a community, making sure that you're including community voice within your program structure, making sure that the people you serve have a hand, obviously in building the program that's meant to help them, building relationships and collaborations across the board, like partnerships with other nonprofits who may serve the same population in a different way. So if you take the writing aspect out of it, it really is a big part of, I would say 60 to 70% of it is about relationships and partnerships that you can make in the community. So people have this misconception about, if I write this perfect grant application, then of course it will be funded, where you could write a perfect grant application, but the organization who has taken the time to build the relationships within the community and with the funder is the one that's more likely to be funded. So I think that's the biggest misconception and the biggest challenge, I think, when people are starting to take on grant writing into their fundraising program, is that they're really focused more on the grant instead of the partnerships and relationships that they should be building. And another thing is, I really think that grant writing in itself has to be kind of really strategic. You have to show what your impact is. And a lot of times, especially new organizations writing grant, they talk about more about what their outputs are, like they served 500 people meals, as opposed to what that means, what the actual outcome of that is. You served the 500 people meals, but then this allowed them to stay in their house because they were able to meet their rent, or this allowed them to, go out for job training because they didn't have to worry about, food for that day. So just really those couple things can really make a big impact on your grant program overall, just outside of the writing piece.
Wow. Mic drop. That's great. Yeah, I mean, and I guess and again, I'm learning something new every day, right? So thank you for sharing with me. And it sounds a lot like what we do at Angel Oak, right? With marketing for nonprofits and communicating for nonprofits. It is about relationships, right? It is about engaging people in conversations, about inviting them into your mission, and not just telling them about yourself, right? That's a part of it, but it's not the goal, right? The goal isn't just for them to hear something, it's for them to actually feel some kind of connection. And it sounds like that's what you do with grant funding organizations, is you help to make that connection between their own mission and the missions of the nonprofits that you serve. So that's I think you're right. I think that is a misconception that most nonprofits have, that it's all about the writing and not about the relationship. So
exactly.
That's definitely a good takeaway that I hope folks get from this discussion. You mentioned that you worked with 30 or so nonprofits. I'm sure many of those were here in North Carolina. This year we're talking a lot about, as part of Angel Oak's theme of state of nonprofits, the state of the nonprofits in North Carolina. We believe that we're a stronger state and that we're a stronger community when our nonprofits are stronger, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on the state of nonprofits in North Carolina, from your experience and, observations?
Sure. I think that they're continuing to evolve and grow to meet the community needs. And that's exactly what you want to see. You don't want us to stay in a stagnant state where we're doing the same thing that was always done. As I mentioned before, I think more nonprofits are really starting to include the community voice within their program structure, and really reaching out to the people that they serve on a higher level to get them involved. And they're looking at systemic changes, systemic root causes, as opposed to just putting a Band-Aid on what they see right before them. So I see a lot around, we'll take affordable housing for example. You see a lot of advocacy around that, as well as nonprofits who are boots on the ground, doing the work, but you're seeing the spectrum kind of broaden because, you realize that nonprofits can't just do one thing. You can't just build houses and say, here's affordable housing. You have to really look at what led to the crisis of affordable housing, particularly here in Mecklenburg County, and address those root causes as well as build affordable housing as well. So I like the collaboration that I'm seeing between city, state, and county level officials with nonprofits that seems to be growing. And there seems to be a growing trust in some ways with nonprofits who have proven outcomes and proven results to be more collaborative with other partner agencies to get things done. So from my perspective, I see a lot improving in the state of nonprofits in North Carolina.
That's great. I mean, I love the collaborative, message, the collaborative approach to serving is so, we've just seen it to be so critical, right? That we can't live in silos. And once we get to the place where we're competing, that nonprofits are competing with each other, it becomes unhealthy, right? It becomes unproductive and almost counterproductive in some ways. Do you have an example, and you don't have to name names if you prefer not to, but do you have an example of where some nonprofits have collaborated either through some of the grants that you've done or just maybe within the community that have had an impact?
Sure. One of the larger nonprofits that I worked with here in North Carolina years ago was Goodwill. And they do a wonderful job of collaborating, not only within the nonprofit sector, but in the employment sector, matching people with jobs and job training, at the time providing veterans with job training and different resources as well. And then they built a construction training center.
Oh,
and
wow.
They collaborated with the local community college as well as another nonprofit to find resources, recruit people, find resources for them, pay them a livable wage, and make sure that they were really on their way. The program helped them get those construction skills to fill a gap that they could see building in the construction and skilled trade industry. And then connect them with jobs that would be not only a livable wage, but a family sustaining wage as well. So I thought that was a great example of the collaboration that they do within the community.
Yeah. And there's so many opportunities like that out there. We have a client that's diaper trained, and they're a diaper bank here in Raleigh, and they've partnered with hospitals, they've partnered with food banks, they've partnered with their Maggie Kane here in Raleigh has a place at the table. It's a pay what you can model, and having the availability of the tokens that are, that you can get from place at the table available to the families who come to pick up diapers, right? I mean, just those kinds of little collaborative efforts, just go a long way in creating a stronger community, a stronger state of nonprofits, right? So I love that. What we do here at Angel Oak, a lot of time, what our focus is really helping clients clearly communicate their mission, their vision. Part of the grant writing process and part of having those the grantors understand things is making sure that they're clearly communicating that mission and vision. What are some things that you've seen of how they can do that well and effectively to ensure that those relationships with those grant funders are built on a clear understanding of what that mission is?
Sure. Again, I think it just goes beyond a grant application. So before you even, submit a grant application, kind of taking the time out to reach out to the program officer or somebody within the funding organizations to just kind of talk to them and let them know, talk about how your mission and their focus aligns. Again, it's not fundraising at this point, it's fundraising, really making them aware of things that are going on in the community. One of the things I tell my clients all the time is that you have to be an expert in your target population. So really be able to tell the facts about how your target population, how they got to be, what are the root causes, and then how you're trying to address them. So if it's a target population or you're a nonprofit that's focused on education, you want to look at the schools that you're serving, what are their testing outcomes? You want to look at the neighborhoods that you're serving, what are their incomes? You want to look at the parents of the children, what are their educational levels?
Yeah.
You want to look at the mix of the diversity of students and teachers and see how well that's working. And then you want to look at what you would like that model to look like. So if there's some tried and true tested at evidence-based models that will make sense for this target population. So again, you just want to be an expert on your target population when you're making that case and really showing what your mission and vision is to different prospective funders.
I don't think most of my, if I think about the nonprofits in Angel Oak, well, you've probably worked with 60 or so nonprofits a year. And I think if I would have asked any of them, or many of them, I shouldn't say any, I'm guessing there are some that do this really well, but if many of them would not know that it was even an option to reach out to a program person at a grantor, right? That probably wouldn't have been something I would have even recommended. So shame on me. But I mean, it's I guess that's a common misunderstanding, I guess, that there's the protocol doesn't have to be one of a distance, that you can reach out and make those connections and create that relationship. I think to your, I'm learning a lot here today. So thank you. Just when I thought I knew something, you're proving me wrong. So I think that I mean, so when you go into a nonprofit, one of these 30 that you've worked with in the last year, for most of them, have they even understood that that's an option, that they can start to build those relationships, or is that kind of an aha moment for them? Or
I would say probably about half of them probably have understood like the whole grant process. And that half has been the ones that have already had a grant program going and kind of understand, have grants as just a part of their fundraising program and have been successful in the past. I would say the ones who probably, need more education are the ones who are starting the grant program, and, they're maybe getting, some pushing from their board. We're like, you need to go after grants, and you need to go after this specific grant. And we're like, okay, let's look at really how they align with you. Cause I'm one, you don't want to fit a square peg into a circle. Like, you really want to make sure that it aligns, because to get a return on investment, especially for an organization, if you're working with a consulting firm like mine, the whole purpose is to get a return on investment on what you're putting into our contract. So we're really looking at the best fits for the organization, and trying to educate them along the way, even about like grant cycles. So, right now, if we're applying for stuff in May, most likely we won't hear until August, at least 90 days, 90 to 100 days. That's kind of the grant cycle once you submit a grant, and then if you got it or not. So if we're applying for stuff now, we're really applying for stuff for the next fiscal year, and we're talking about how that would potentially impact your finances then as well. So it's a lot of education around those things, where people come into grant, the grant world is new, and they're just like, I want to apply for grants, because they think that's they may be under the impression that that's an easier way to get money. It's not an easier way to get money, as opposed to building up the individual and major gift part of their fundraising program. So we try to educate them on all these different things. Like you said, reaching out to the program officer. A lot of times, even when people do know to do it, they're kind of stretched thin. Like, as fundraisers, we wear a lot of different hats. So if you're a one-person fundraising team, or if you're an executive director who's invested more time in your program, kind of boots on the ground team, that can be a major, a major part of your time. If you're spending a lot of time building relationships with funders, then working on the program part, then working on the operation part. So we try to make it easy for them. Yeah, exactly. They wear a lot of hats. So we try to make it easy. Like, let's just contact one person per month, or really kind of break it down on who is best aligned for your organization. And here's what you should be spending your time kind of talking to people and getting out into the community.
So really a laser approach.
Laser focus, yes.
The scatter shot approach.
Yep.
You know, you have written a lot of grants, you've been involved in a lot of nonprofits. You know, what are the things that you've seen that are indicators of a really effective nonprofit? What are those characteristics, whether it be leadership or whether it be kind of the nonprofit from an operational standpoint? What are the 3 things or so that you've found that are kind of common among really effective nonprofits, really strong nonprofits?
So I guess it's so many, but I'll start with some of the things that I look at when I'm kind of vetting a client. So one, strong leadership, a person who knows the program side really well and is invested in that, but is also has a knowledge of fundraising or a willingness to learn. So if I say, hey, here's your overall fundraising program, here's where grants should kind of fit into it, and here's what we'll do to get started, but we'll need this type of communication from you and this type of help, and they're like gung-ho about it and really excited about it. I would say 1, excited and strong leadership. 2, finances. You need to have your finances in order. You need to have your 990s and your audits in order, because most funders are going to want to have to look at that. We want to have organizational budgets as well as program budgets. Your budgets, the financial analysis on a grant making side is just as important as the narrative. So you really want to have that in order. And then 3, I would probably say knowing the impact of your organization. So again, it goes back to, you didn't serve 500 meals this month. You allowed families to live on their own and to live independently. You, served as nutrition in a food insecure county. So, really thinking about the impact of your mission and how you're communicating that. And I think that is really, when I'm kind of vetting a client, that's what I'm looking at. Like, okay, do they have all these things in place? Now, if they don't have all these things in place, doesn't necessarily mean that they, won't be a client, but that's the ideal client for me.
Right. And you can, a lot of your work might be even helping them get to that place, right, where they are ready.
Yep.
So that's great. The other question we hear often is what's the right fundraising mix, right? What's how much of my fundraising should be grants? How much of it should be individual donations? How much of it should be, sponsorships? So is there a rule of thumb? Is there some, kind of mix that seems to make for a healthy, effective fundraising?
I really think it depends on the organization. So it needs to be, what I will say is that it needs to be diverse. You should never put all your eggs into one basket. So I think, having a strong individual giving program, countered by maybe some special events at the least, maybe a special event, or, you're leaning towards that way, individual giving program, which includes the identification of some major donors, as well as a grant program, would be a start. But, if you look at it as like a pie chart, it needs to be diverse. You should not rely on grants as your only source of income. What I think a lot of organizations don't realize, especially smaller ones or ones that are grassroots that are now thinking about applying for grants, is that just having grants as your only source of income is unsustainable. Because the foundations and corporations, they don't want to support you forever. They want to become your partner, invest in you, be able to tell your story as their own because they've invested in you. But at some point, it's always a change in those foundations. It's always a change in the corporations in terms of what their mission is. They start to evolve as the community evolves, and the community needs evolve. So you really want to think about long-term sustainable income. You look at those individual donors. I always tell the story of how I used to work at an organization in Philly, and we would get from December 1st to the end of the year, we would get the same checks every single year. December 1st, we would get a $25,000 check from a long-term donor every single year, which was amazing. You could count on that. These are the type of donors that will also leave you in their will, leave bequests,
Right.
And that's not the case with grants. Grants are wonderful. Grants, you might be able to get a grant from the same donor for 5 years, but at some point, that funder is going to say, we need to step down this funding. We need to see that they can survive on their own. We need to
Yeah.
open up our grant funding to other nonprofits. So I think that's, the major thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. What, I guess as we, wrap up here, what one piece of advice, whether it's around grant writing or grant, kind of the grant process, or, any other part of, strengthening nonprofits and making our state a stronger state of nonprofits, what one piece of advice would you give either development directors or executive directors out there?
Well, first I'll say you're doing God's work.
Yeah.
And being in fundraising my whole career, and now, having the honor and the pleasure of getting to work with so many different nonprofits, keep up the good work. It's hard. It's hard to wear so many hats. And, when you really care deeply about your mission, it becomes more than just work to you. You get to make a real impact on the community. So I would say that first and foremost. When it comes to managing, growing, starting a grant program, I think it's the same thing that I said before. It's relationships, relationships, relationships. Like, build relationships within the community that you serve. Build relationships with your local city council, county commissioners, state level officials if possible, and then build relationships with funders and donors first and foremost, because those relationships are what will make your fundraising program strong, and that will be the foundation that will continue to help it grow for years to come.
Oh, that's great. Who should reach out to you? Who might benefit from your services at Scribe?
Sure, I think all nonprofits, obviously, I think will benefit from my services,
Right.
our services at Scribe. But I think nonprofits who are at the point, one, where they want to start a grant program, or secondly, where they're in a grant program, but they want to continue to see it grow. And they want to just put some, expert level eyes on things. We work with organizations of all sizes and, all different types of service areas. So we really feel like we can help everybody. And the joy of our job is, we all work remotely, but really, reading about the impact that we helped have on different communities is very satisfying.
I know, it's so great. We're honored to be able to live in that world too. And just, I love what you talk about when you talk about really sharing the impact beyond the numbers, right? It's the personal stories that, whether it's what it means to receive a diaper, what it means to, to have access to education or a meal, or to be able to have a house that you can afford, all of those things, recovery from addiction, right? I mean, all of those things are just so inspiring. So grateful for that. How can people learn more about Scribe and, be able to find the unicorn that you all are?
Oh, well, thank you. Our website is www.scribellcnc.com. There's a link on there to book for a free consultation. If they want to learn more about us or just our grant writing services, we'd be happy to talk to them.
And I think you're on LinkedIn, right? I think that we may have run in somewhere over there, and
yes,
definitely encourage people to connect with Autumn and find out more about Scribe. You all do some amazing work. We share a client or two, and grateful for that, and haven't heard nothing but good things about the work that you're doing. So thank you for that. Thank you for helping to build our state into a stronger state of nonprofits, and encouraging those who are trying to do better at building relationships in grant writing, which I think is the takeaway today, to really focus on that. So thank everyone for listening today, for watching. Our episodes are coming out about every 3 or 4 weeks right now. Grateful for that. You can learn more about Angel Oak Creative at angeloakcreative.com. You can listen to our podcast, Nonprofit State of Minds, at Spotify and Apple and all the usual places. And learn more about what we're doing. We are giving away, Autumn, just for your clients to know, we're giving away $10,000 this year in partnership with Town Bank. It's not really a grant process, but if you go to stateofnonprofitsnc.com, there's actually a little form you can fill out there, and people can kind of put their name in the hat for getting that $1,000 donation to their organization. So we hope people will take advantage of that. But thank you so much for your time, all the wisdom that you've shared, and we look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been a blast to be able to talk to you. And I hope that people do find this useful.
Well, thank you so much. Take care, Autumn.
All right.